Over the top? No, we had no over the top rules. We were totally reasonable, thoughtful parents who made solid decisions at every turn.
In 1973, Harrison Ford and Paul Le Mat did something to Ron Howard that haunts him today. They threw bottles at his car and locked him in a trailer, calling it Opie shaming. But that was just the beginning. For 50 years, Howard stayed quiet about the dark side of Hollywood. Now he's revealing everything. The accidents that nearly killed actors on his sets, the lawsuits that cost millions, the family secrets that almost tore his marriage apart. America's favorite director finally admits the truth about his painful journey. Ron Howard was born on March 1, 1954, in a small town called Duncan, Oklahoma. His dad, Rance, was trying to make it as an actor and writer. His mom, Jean, was also an actress. They didn't have much money. In fact, things were really tough. But in 1958, when Ron was just 4 years old, they packed everything they owned and moved to Hollywood. They were chasing a dream, hoping that both of them could get better acting jobs. It was risky. They had no guarantees. They ended up in a tiny home in Burbank, trying to stay afloat while raising their little red-haired boy. The strange part was, they lived close to a major studio. So young Ron grew up seeing actors, cameras, and film sets almost every day. He didn't go to a normal preschool. Instead, he was taught on movie sets, watching everything, and slowly becoming part of that world, even though no one had planned for it. That big move to California didn't just change where they lived, it quietly changed their whole future. On January 4, 1956, when Ron was just 18 months old, he appeared in a movie called Frontier Woman. It wasn't planned. His father needed a baby for one short scene and decided to use Ron. That tiny moment, just a baby crawling across a set, was the start of something huge. His parents were still struggling financially, especially because his dad had only just left the Air Force. By July 15, 1956, Ron was even performing live in a theater play. But even as he appeared more, his parents didn't want him to be treated like other child stars. They refused to sign any long-term contracts until he turned 5. That decision nearly destroyed them financially. In 1957, they were so broke that Rance thought about quitting acting and moving back to Oklahoma to be a farmer. But they stayed, barely hanging on, believing they were doing the right thing for their son. Starting in 1954, Ron's parents made one rule very clear: no full-time acting until he was at least 5. That meant turning down big offers in 1957 and 1958, even when they couldn't afford rent. They had to pawn things just to keep going. By the end of 1958, they were seriously thinking about leaving Hollywood, but they didn't. In 1959, Ron turned 5, and things slowly started changing. That year, he was cast in a movie called The Journey, and for the first time, his name appeared in the credits, but it wasn't all happy. On set, other crew members made fun of his red hair and freckles. They called him names like freckle-faced freak. It broke his heart. His dad, who was also working on the set, got into an argument with one of the crew and almost lost his job. The job only paid $2,500, but it meant everything to them. That same year, his younger brother Clint was born on April 20th. Money was still tight. Their debt reached the modern-day value of about $5,000, but his parents stayed firm on protecting Ron. They kept him in public school. They let him be a kid as much as they could, even as the pressure grew. Then, in 1960, something huge happened. Ron landed the role of Opie Taylor in The Andy Griffith Show. He was just 6 years old. The casting process was long and hard. More than 300 kids auditioned, but Ron's natural charm stood out. The show began airing on October 3, 1960, and it became a hit. It ran for 249 episodes, and Ron was in 243 of them. At the start, he was paid $300 per episode. By the time the show ended in 1968, he was making $1,000 an episode. But with that success came a lot of pressure. He was still only a child, yet he had to memorize lines, show up on time, and perform perfectly. There was no live audience, so every joke and scene had to be delivered with exact timing. It wasn't easy, but he learned fast. The show felt like it took place in a simpler time, and Ron's character made people feel safe and warm. That's why viewers loved him. But behind the scenes, he was growing up fast. Ron and Andy Griffith, the star of the show, became very close. Andy was more than just a co-star. He acted like a mentor. He would explain scenes to Ron and tell him stories between takes. Their bond started when Ron was just 6, and it grew stronger over time. But things weren't always calm. Andy struggled with drinking, and sometimes Ron saw him get into angry arguments on set. It was scary. In one case, Andy read a bad review out loud and became upset in front of everyone. Despite all this, he was still kind to Ron, helping him with emotional scenes and treating him with respect. Years later, in 1997, Andy even visited Ron on a movie set in Queens. They didn't find out until after Andy died in 2012 that they were actually distant cousins. It was a shocking and sweet discovery that made their long bond feel even more special. In 1962, during a scene on a lake, 8-year-old Ron nearly drowned. They were filming a fishing scene on a small boat when something went wrong. The boat tipped, and Ron fell into the water. Andy Griffith saw it happen and jumped in without a second thought. He pulled Ron out. The producers didn't want anyone to know because it could damage the show's reputation. So it stayed quiet. But Ron never forgot it. There were no safety rules back then. Kids could work long hours, and accidents weren't uncommon. That near drowning left a mark on Ron, and years later, when he started directing films, he made sure every set had safety plans in place. By 1968, when the Andy Griffith Show ended, Ron was 14. But instead of getting more roles, he got rejected. Over 50 auditions in 1968 and 1969 went nowhere. Everyone still saw him as Opie. He felt trapped. He told his parents he wanted to quit. He took small roles like Gentle Ben in 1969 for just $500 per episode, far less than what he used to earn. In 1970, he lost the lead in The Wild Country. Things kept getting worse. He joined the Smith family in 1971, earning $8,000 for 39 episodes. But the show flopped. All this rejection gave him anxiety, which he hid from others. At the same time, he was playing basketball in high school, averaging 12 points per game in 1972. He tried to live a normal teen life, but inside, he felt stuck. In 1973, things changed again. Ron was 19 and got cast in American Graffiti. It was directed by George Lucas. Filming started in June in California. On the outside, it looked exciting, but behind the scenes, things were rough. Co-stars Harrison Ford and Paul Le Mat bullied him. On July 15th, they threw beer bottles near his car and yelled at him to "Dance, Opie, dance." They locked him in a trailer on July 20th, making him miss rehearsals. They even spiked his drinks. All of it was because he had been a child star, and they didn't respect that. Ron stayed quiet. He later called it his only moment of Opie shaming. Despite everything, he made it through and earned $10,000. Years later, Ford apologized, but the pain stuck with him. Back in 1970, Ron had met Cheryl Alley in high school. Their first date was on November 1st, and by December, a rumor spread that Cheryl was pregnant. They were just 16. The gossip exploded. In January 1971, Ron denied it in the school newspaper. In February, tabloids picked it up. He lost a TV guest role worth $2,000 because of it. Cheryl was devastated, but they stayed together. Ron proposed 3 times. She finally said yes in October 1974. They got married on June 7, 1975. They've now been together for 50 years. Ron often calls her his good luck charm. Money was still a problem after Andy Griffith. In January 1971, Ron started delivering newspapers. He made $150 a month and delivered 200 papers before school each day. He needed money to take Cheryl out. But on April 5, 1971, he was rear-ended by a truck while driving to an audition. He got whiplash and had to delay his next role. Medical bills hit $3,000. He didn't have insurance. He even sold his bike for $200. The pain stayed for years and affected how he moved during later film scenes. Even after American Graffiti became a massive hit in 1973, Ron didn't make what he deserved. The film made $115 million in the US on a tiny $777,000 budget. But Ron only got a flat $10,000, no share of the profits. He asked George Lucas for 1%, worth over $1 million. Lucas said no. It hurt their friendship. Ron had to take a job on Happy Days in 1974 for $1,000 per episode just to have steady income. That show helped his career again and led him to directing. Back in January 1974, Ron Howard was just 19 when he started playing Richie Cunningham on a brand new TV show called Happy Days. The very first episode aired on January 15th and pulled in 11 million viewers. At first, the show focused on Richie's teenage life in 1950s Milwaukee. But by 1976, everything started to change. Fonzie, played by Henry Winkler, became the breakout star. Suddenly, ratings exploded. The show jumped to #1, reaching 31 million viewers every single week. That same year, ABC executives came up with a new plan. They wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days to cash in on Fonzie's rising fame. In 1976 alone, Fonzie merchandise made over $1 million. But Ron Howard wasn't okay with it. He had been the star since the beginning, and now he was being pushed to the side. In November 1976, he gave the producers an ultimatum. If they changed the title, he would quit. Even though his contract lasted until 1980, he was ready to walk away. Everything nearly fell apart. But then, the news leaked to Variety magazine on December 5th, and fans were furious. More than 10,000 letters poured into ABC. People didn't want the heart of the show to be lost. ABC gave in. They kept the original title, and Howard stayed. But something had changed forever. By 1977, the show was making $50 million a year. Yet Howard was earning only $25,000 per episode, while Winkler was pulling in $75,000. Howard later said in a 1980 interview that this moment was a turning point. It pushed him to think more about directing. Things on set weren't peaceful either. Around 1976 and 1977, when the show was at its peak, the cast started fighting over money and screen time. Anson Williams, who played Potsy, was making $12,000 per episode. That was half of what Ron Howard earned. He was frustrated and jealous. On November 16, 1976, during the filming of an episode called The Muckrakers, Williams reportedly stormed off the set. Gary Marshall, the show's creator, had rewritten a scene to favor Howard. Some thought it was favoritism. There were rumors of a physical fight, but nothing was ever proven. ABC tried to keep it quiet to protect their $50 million machine. Years later, in 2012, things got even messier. Williams and other cast members sued CBS for $10 million in unpaid royalties. They claimed they never got their share from all the merchandise. Just in 1976, over 5 million Happy Days lunchboxes were sold. The case was settled on April 4, 2012. Each of them received only $65,000. Williams said he never even made $100,000 a year, while the studios made millions. Howard wasn't part of the lawsuit, but in a 2025 interview, he admitted those moments almost ruined friendships. While still acting on Happy Days, Howard quietly made his first short film in early 1975. It was called Deed of Daring Do, just 10 minutes long. He shot it during a 2-week break in March, using only $2,000. Even Henry Winkler made a cameo. The film premiered at a small festival on June 15, 1975. There were rumors someone accused him of plagiarism, but nothing was ever proven. Back then, copyright laws were unclear. In fact, a fanfic lawsuit in 1976 forced other creators to settle for up to $5,000, but nothing tied to Howard. What really shook him was when producer Roger Corman asked for reshoots on April 20, 1975. It cost him an extra $500, almost wiping out his budget. The film later won a small prize at the Atlanta Film Festival on September 10th. This little project pushed him to direct Grand Theft Auto in 1977. That movie cost only $600,000, but made $15 million. Howard married his high school sweetheart, Cheryl Alley, on June 7, 1975. The wedding in Burbank cost just $800. About 300 guests came, and Henry Winkler was the best man. Cheryl's father paid for it. Even though Howard was making $25,000 per episode, he wanted a simple wedding. They took a quiet, 2-week honeymoon in Hawaii, starting June 8, 1975. There were rumors that tabloids leaked private photos and started infidelity stories in 1977, but there's no real proof. The worst of the gossip came later, in 1978. On October 15th, the National Enquirer spread false cheating rumors. Howard called it humiliating. In a 2025 interview, he said their 50th anniversary gift was a kissing chair, reminding them of young love. By July 1980, Ron Howard made a bold move. He left Happy Days. The show still had 20 million weekly viewers, but Howard wanted more. He asked ABC if he could direct TV movies. They refused and offered him $100,000 for 3 more years. He said no. On July 20, 1980, he signed with NBC for $1 million. That new deal gave him full creative control. He left Happy Days just before Season 8 began on September 9, 1980. Fans were shocked. By August, 15,000 letters flooded ABC, begging him to return. Howard later said ABC treated him like an eagle snatching a baby. His first big project after leaving was Night Shift, which came out in 1982 and made $21 million. But the show was never the same. Ratings dropped by 30% without Richie. It still ran until 1984 with 255 episodes in total. In 1977, just 23 years old, Howard directed Grand Theft Auto. He also starred in it and co-wrote it with his father Rance. It was released on June 16th and became a surprise hit, making $15 million. But during filming, a car stunt went terribly wrong. Stuntman Paul Bartel was seriously injured. He broke bones and had internal injuries. Howard was terrified his directing career would end before it began. He settled the lawsuit quietly in 1978. That accident stayed with him. He made safety a top priority in future projects. In 1984, Howard directed Splash, which hit theaters on March 9th. It cost $11 million to make and earned $69.8 million. It made Tom Hanks a star. But behind the scenes, things got messy. Hanks had tantrums, especially over script changes. On July 15, 1983, during filming in New York, Hanks got into a screaming match with crew. Howard had to step in to stop a fight. Studios nearly canceled the film, but Disney saved it using their new Touchstone label. In 1985, during Cocoon filming in Florida, Howard received a death threat from an angry extra named Harold Jenkins. On February 12th, Jenkins, who had been fired, sent letters threatening violence. He felt the film mocked the elderly. Fox had to hire 24-hour security for $150,000. The script was softened, and release was delayed until June 21st. The film still made $85 million and won Oscars for Donna Meche and visual effects. In 1988, Willow came out on May 20th. George Lucas had come up with the idea in 1972, and Howard directed it with a $35 million budget. It made $137.6 million globally, but still lost $20 million due to massive marketing and lukewarm reviews. Lucas and Howard clashed constantly. In June 1987, they argued over $5 million in cuts. Howard nearly quit. Home video later helped it break even. In 1989, Howard released Parenthood on August 2nd. It was inspired by a chaotic trip to Australia with his 4-year-old daughter, who threw up sushi on him mid-flight. The film cost $20 million and made $126 million. But in May 1989, writer Elena Vasquez sued Howard, claiming he stole her script. He paid $500,000 to settle in June. The case almost stopped the film's release. In 1991, Howard directed Backdraft, a firefighter drama. On July 23, 1990, a stunt went wrong. A massive fire broke out, burning Kurt Russell's hand and face. An OSHA investigation found serious safety violations. 3 other crew members were also burned. Howard later said they never knew when the fire would turn on them. Still, the movie earned $152 million and got an Oscar nomination for visual effects. In 1995, Apollo 13 came out on June 30th. It made $355 million worldwide, but filming was rough. Tom Hanks demanded accuracy down to exact NASA transcripts. On October 12, 1994, he insisted on script rewrites. By October 15th, the entire production shut down, costing $2 million. Howard threatened to quit on October 18th. NASA staff had to mediate. The film later won Oscars for editing and sound in 1996. In 1996, Ransom came out on November 8th, making $309 million. But while filming in early 1996, Howard received chilling threats that mirrored the movie. On February 14th, someone sent letters threatening his kids. The FBI got involved. Tapped phones and shady cars were found near his house. The family had to relocate on March 5th. No arrests were made, but the suspects fled California in April. Howard later said this made the movie his most personal work. In 2000, The Grinch came out on November 17th, starring Jim Carrey. It made $345 million. But the filming was brutal. Carrey had to sit through 2.5 hours of makeup every day. On March 22nd, he snapped. He got into a fight with Howard and even shoved him. Filming stopped for a day. Carrey later promised better behavior by April. It paid off when the film won an Oscar for makeup in 2001. In 2001, Howard released A Beautiful Mind on December 21st. It told the story of John Nash and his battle with schizophrenia. It made $313 million and won Best Picture and Best Director at the Oscars on March 24, 2002. But the set was tense. Russell Crowe had violent outbursts. He once threw a phone at a hotel clerk on June 10th. On April 15th, Howard even fired him. But just 2 days later, he hired him back to avoid losing $500,000 a day. Jennifer Connelly, who played Nash's wife, said Howard held everything together through the chaos. In 2006, Ron Howard's movie The Da Vinci Code caused an uproar all over the world. Religious groups were furious, especially the Catholic Church. The story suggested Jesus married Mary Magdalene and had a child, which was supposedly covered up by a group called Opus Dei. This made people protest in many countries. In India, Christian groups demanded it be banned. In the Philippines, it was rated for adults only. Ron Howard even got death threats and had to hire bodyguards after a bomb scare hit the Cannes premiere on May 17th. Critics booed and laughed during the screening. On February 14th, Opus Dei begged Sony to add a fiction disclaimer, calling the movie a twisted image of the church. U.S. Catholic bishops launched a website called JesusDecoded.com and labeled the film morally offensive. Even with all the controversy, it made $760 million around the world. But Howard admitted later that the constant anger around it felt frustrating. In Italy, both Howard and writer Dan Brown nearly got arrested for filming without permits. The Vatican called it anti-Catholic and told people not to watch it. which ironically made more people curious. In 2017, things got messy during the making of Solo, a Star Wars story. The original directors, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, were fired in June due to creative clashes with Lucasfilm. Ron Howard was brought in to save the project. He ended up reshooting about 70% of the film between late June and mid-October to meet a tight May 2018 deadline. This pushed the budget to $275 million. Leaks claimed Howard ruined the movie by cutting out the fun, risky style and replacing it with a more classic Star Wars feel. There were even lawsuits. Some actors, like Alden Ehrenreich, needed help to get into character. Release got delayed. Lord and Miller decided not to take director credit and accepted executive producer titles instead. Fans weren't happy and even started petitions against Howard. Some insiders said he ignored the earlier footage, which caused fights on set. The film still earned $393 million. But it was far below expectations. People argued over whether Howard played it too safe. In 2009, Angels and Demons brought Ron Howard more trouble. The movie painted the Catholic Church as the enemy, with a wild story about the Illuminati and antimatter threatening Rome. On May 3rd, Howard said the Vatican secretly blocked him from filming inside churches, which forced his team to build fake versions. He believed this hidden boycott cost him $50 million in earnings. Even though the Vatican's paper later called the movie harmless, they had first refused to support it. Archbishop Velasio de Paulus warned in April that protesting might just make things worse, like what happened with the Da Vinci Code. Another Catholic leader, William Donahue, told people not to boycott but to spread the truth instead. Some churches even denied filming access because the story included murders. The movie still made $485 million, and Tom Hanks said it was meant to spark curiosity, not anger. Unlike the earlier film, the Vatican mostly stayed quiet. In 2015, Ron Howard's company Imagine Entertainment got hit with a serious lawsuit over the 2014 film The Good Lie. 54 Sudanese refugees claimed their real-life pain was used in the movie without fair pay. On February 19th, they filed a 101-page lawsuit in Atlanta. They said they had shared heartbreaking stories of starvation and escaping militias in exchange for $55,000 and a promise of help. The movie came out on October 3rd, starring Reese Witherspoon, but the refugees said they never saw a dime. Producers Bobby Newmyer and Mike Nagel were accused of breaking their deal. Fans were shocked since Howard's team had raised millions for refugee aid. The suit settled in 2017 with a secret agreement. Howard wasn't personally named, but the backlash was strong. The movie only made $3.2 million in the US, but left a heavy mark because of the real pain behind it. During filming for Rush in 2013, a terrible accident happened. The film was about a real Formula One rivalry in 1976, and during a scene where Niki Lauda's fiery crash was recreated, a stunt driver named David Crowder got hurt. On August 1st, while shooting the fiery wreck at Nürburgring, a suspension failed and the car crashed. It was eerily similar to the real event. Crowder sued, saying safety was ignored. In 2014, the case ended in a settlement. Things got worse when Sean Edwards, the son of the film's stunt coordinator, died in a crash just 18 days after the movie's release on September 27. Howard got subpoenaed and faced tough questions about cutting corners with the $38 million budget. Rush made $90 million, but many said it glorified danger too much, especially since real crash footage of Lauda's injuries was used. In August 2025, Ron's daughter Bryce Dallas Howard faced the Nepo baby debate head-on. Born on March 2, 1981, she spoke on a podcast called Happy, Sad, Confused, saying she was fully aware of her Hollywood privilege. Her dad Ron, her uncle Clint, born 1959, her grandfather Rance, 1928-2017, and her grandma Jean, 1927 to 2000, were all in the business. Bryce admitted doors opened easily for her, but she also stressed how hard she worked. Fans online had mixed feelings. Some praised her honesty, while others questioned if Ron had helped her get roles. Ron never publicly said he gave her jobs, but Bryce kept repeating that family privilege played a big role. In 2025, BuzzFeed praised her openness, especially compared to other stars who deny any advantage. One surprising detail was that her godfather is Henry Winkler. By then, she had directed several films and starred in Jurassic World, which earned over $1.6 billion in 2015. Ron's father, Rance Howard, passed away on November 25, 2017, at age 89. He had heart failure after suffering from West Nile virus. Born Harold Beckenholt on November 17, 1928, Rance started acting in 1949 and had roles in over 140 films and 177 TV shows. His sons Ron and Clint wrote a loving tribute in People, saying Rance's love for acting changed their family forever. He appeared in movies like Chinatown and Nebraska. There were rumors about a fight between Clint and Ron over the will, but no solid proof ever showed up. Instead, everything pointed to a strong bond between the brothers. Ron even tweeted how lucky he felt to have Clint as his brother. The two worked on many projects together, including Grand Theft Auto in 1977. One emotional fact: Rance kept acting until the very end. He finished a role just 36 hours before he died. Ron and Cheryl Howard celebrated 50 years of marriage on June 7, 2025. They first met in high school at John Burroughs High in Burbank, California. Their very first date was on November 1, 1970. They watched It's a Mad, 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 Mad World and had pizza. On Instagram, Ron shared how thankful he was for the ups and downs they had faced together. They raised 4 kids: Bryce, born in 1981, twins Paige and Jocelyn in 1985, and Reed in 1987, and had 6 grandkids by 2025. There were whispers of a near divorce in the 1980s due to Ron's work obsession, but no recent interview confirmed it. Instead, they seemed stronger than ever. In 2020, Ron said there was never anyone else for him. The sweetest moment came when they recreated their first date in their old 1970 VW Bug, and Cheryl became the fun grandma who broke all the rules for the grandkids. In 2011, Ron Howard caught heat over a line in his movie The Dilemma, released January 14th. Vince Vaughn's character made a joke saying electric cars were gay, not in the homosexual sense, but in a lame way. Glad and Ellen DeGeneres slammed the joke for encouraging bullying, especially after a student named Tyler Clementi died by suicide in September 2010. Universal took the joke out of trailers on October 30th, but Howard left it in the actual film. He said the joke fit the character's personality, and removing it would hurt comedy. Speaking to the BBC in January, he admitted he didn't expect such a strong reaction, though he later saw how the word could be harmful. Critics like Anderson Cooper and Glad called it a dangerous slur. Howard said he cared about sensitivity, but didn't want to censor storytelling. The movie earned $69.7 million, but the joke stayed a sore spot. In 2020, Ron directed Hillbilly Elegy for Netflix. The movie came out on November 24th and was based on J.D. Vance's memoir. Amy Adams played the mom, Glenn Close played the grandma, and her role got both an Oscar nomination and a Razzie. The movie had a $45 million budget. Critics gave it just 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, but audiences rated it 82%. In August 2025, Howard told Vulture he was shocked when Vance became Trump's running mate in 2024. He said Vance seemed moderate when they filmed in 2018 and 2019. Back in 2016, Vance had even called Trump reprehensible. Howard admitted he sent a cold text on November 6, 2024, congratulating Vance, but saying he was disappointed. He called the movie a mixed bag. It got bad reviews, but a strong fan response. Howard said the real surprise was Vance's change in values. Ron's 2025 film Eden premiered at the Toronto Film Festival on September 7th. The movie was once titled Origin of the Species and starred Jude Law, Ana de Armas, Vanessa Kirby, Daniel Bruhl, and Sydney Sweeney. It was inspired by a wild 1920s true story from the Galapagos Islands, where jealousy and betrayal led to murder. Filming began on November 27, 2023, mostly in Queensland, and some shots in the Galapagos, ending February 14, 2024. The budget started at $55 million, but went down to $35 million thanks to Australian tax breaks. Howard said in an August 25th interview that the true story made him nervous during filming. One shocking scene showed a woman giving birth alone and dying based on a real 1934 tragedy. Reviews were mixed. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 68%, with some saying it was absurd, sexy, and dark. Howard said it was a cautionary tale about isolation, especially after COVID. The real case included a baroness and 2 murders, which Howard kept in the script but toned down just slightly. In 2025, Ron got his first acting Emmy nomination for appearing in The Studio, a comedy led by Seth Rogen. The show got 23 nominations on July 15th. Ron played a funny, exaggerated version of himself and got into a screaming match and even a fight with Rogen's character in episode 3, which aired on March 14th. It was the first time he acted on TV since Happy Days ended in 1984. In a September 6th People interview, he said he was too superstitious to expect a win because of something that happened in 1995. Back then, the paper flopped at the box office, making $48 million on a $30 million budget. And Ron blamed it on ignoring a psychic's warning. On Instagram, he joked about his 195 TV years without acting awards. This was his 14th Emmy nomination overall. He'd already won 3 as a producer. Shockingly, the episode's fight scenes were improvised, and Howard ended up with a real bruised rib in January 2025.